Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors meeting to order. Today is December 11th, and at this point, I would like to turn to Andrea Pisano, our board clerk, to get us started with the formalities.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. For those members of the public who would like to speak during our public comment period, in person, please raise your hands. Otherwise, virtually, please raise your hand in Zoom and we will address you at that time. Public speakers are typically limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise indicated by our chair. And with that, before we go to roll call, I would like to ask Director Meadows to make a statement on her participation this evening.
Yes, thank you very much. I am appearing remotely pursuant to AB 2449 because I am unable to attend in person due to a physical disability which qualifies under the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is no other individual 18 years or older present in the room at my remote location.
Thank you. And with that, I will proceed with roll call in person, starting from my left. I have alternate Director Montano.
Here. Here.
Here.
Thank you. Director Hilton.
Here.
Showalter.
Here.
Scozola.
Here.
Mekachuk.
Present.
Mohan.
Here.
Chair Walia.
Here.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Here.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Director Klein.
Here.
Lee.
Present.
Carruthers.
Here.
And participating remotely, Director Meadows.
Here.
Thank you so much. We have a quorum of our board.
Thank you, Andrea. Before we get started with everything else, I would like to take a moment to thank Team SVCE. We had the holiday mixer starting at 5:30. We had a lot of residents come. It was all about the community, and we had a panel discussion, a very good event. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You really are the dream team, Team SVCE. With that, let's get started with public comment on matters that are not on the agenda tonight. Do we have anyone, Andrea, in person or on Zoom?
No hands raised, Chair.
Okay, I'd like to close that. And then we are going to have a closed session item. And let's take public comment on closed session item.
Chair Walia.
Oh, we need to take your, please, Mayor Klein, Director Klein.
Thank you. Chair Walia, I'm recusing myself from the closed session item on 333 West El Camino because I own property within 300 feet of that location. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we do not have any member of the public for any comment?
No public comment.
Okay. So at this point, the board will convene to the adjacent room for the closed session discussion, and we'll be back after that. Okay, it's 7:42, and the board is back from the closed session. And the report from the closed session is that we do not have anything to report. With that, let's get back on track. And we have a full agenda. At the end of the year, there's a lot of work that has gone through different committees, and staff has been working hard. So let's wrap this up. We'll start with the consent calendar. And do I have any public comment on it? Seeing none, I bring it back to the board. Any comments, or do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve consent.
Second.
Okay, Director Lee and Director Makachuk. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you. Chair Walia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Scozola?
Aye.
Mohan?
Aye.
Hilton?
Aye.
Rennie?
Aye.
Montano?
Aye.
Mekachuk?
Aye.
Carruthers?
Aye.
Showalter?
Yes.
Lee?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to the regular calendar, we are going to start with a CEO report from CEO Monica Padilla. She's going to introduce some new staff and so on and so forth. Exciting.
Yep. Okay. Good evening, Chair Walea and directors. My favorite part of the job every month is introducing new employees. And so today we have Marlena Lopez, who would like to say a few words to the board. She joins us as our new Human Resources Administrative Assistant. Marlena has a background of covering a variety of HR and office administration functions, and she'll be lending her skills to our ongoing effort to create a warm, welcoming, and efficient office environment. Marlena.
Perfect. Where do I go?
Right there, that microphone.
Right here. Hello. Hi. Good evening, directors. My name is Marlena Lopez. I will be the HR administrative assistant, as Monica said. I've worked for the last 5 years in business administration, primarily in talent acquisition and HR at Neo, Meta, and a couple of other companies in the Bay Area. And in my spare time, I like hiking and being in nature. So it's nice to meet all of you.
Wonderful. Welcome to SVCE, Marlena, and back to you, CEO.
Great, thank you, Marlena. Also happy to announce several new promotions within SVCE's organization, including Zoe Elizabeth, Peter Mustasich, Joey Landy, and Peyton Parks. I hope you all read why they got promoted and what they're being promoted to, but I won't go into them just to save time. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was that we also finished our organizational realignment. And so if you have any questions, I did provide a summary of it in the CEO report, along with an updated org chart. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any, but I think the main objective of the realignment, both phases, is to better serve our customers, our stakeholders, and obviously our board as well. And then the only other thing I wanted to highlight in this that we did not include in the CEO report is that SVC offices will be closed between December 24th and January 2nd. Right? Christmas Day to New Year's Day, we will be closed. So December 25th through January 1st. So we'll be back in the office on January 2nd. Okay, that concludes my CEO report.
Wonderful. Congratulations to Zoe Elizabeth, Peter Mustasich, Joey Landy, Peyton Parks for their promotions, and I appreciate the organizational chart and the realignment that CEO Padilla has been working on the last 9 months now you have been here. Great successful year. And I also want to draw your attention, in case someone missed, there are new program launches. This is what this is all about, to serve the community. So please take a moment later on to take a quick peek at the different program launches, how we are supporting our residents. With that, any public comment? Seeing none, any quick comments from members of the board? If not, we can move to the next item. Let's move to item number 3, which is approving fiscal year 2024-2025 budget update and 2025 customer rate setting. CFO and Director of Administrative Services, Amrit Singh, will be presenting this. Just to mention, quite a few items here are full of detail. Most of them have gone through both the Executive Committee as well as the Finance and Administrative Committee. So most of the board members here, or a majority, my guess, I didn't do the math, should have gone through the detailed discussion earlier. Amrit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Walia. So, as Chair Walia mentioned, I will provide an update of the budget. If you remember, when the board approved the budget in September, we said we will revisit it at this time when we'll have more information on the likely rates that will be in play for PG&E and PCIA. So I will present. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
So I will be presenting the updated budget for your approval, as well as asking you to approve new rates to be implemented in 2025 to coincide with PG&E's implementation of its rates and new PCIA rates. I will recap the assumptions that were used in the adopted budget and compare them to the updated budget. I'll go through the reserve projections, and I'll also set up the stage for the next agenda item, which is about funding our longer-term strategic priority items, and in particular, I talk about finances that gives us the opportunity to now take those type of initiatives in consideration. And I'll talk about some uncertainties that still remain in the budget. Here's a quick timeline. Again, as Chair Wally mentioned, the both Executive and Finance Committee have reviewed and recommended unanimously that the board adopt this budget. We will have another chance at the budget in mid-year, as we do every year, when we'll do a full comprehensive update to this budget. So key messages is when the board adopted the budget in September, we said we were using conservative assumptions. Can I have the slide? We said we were using the conservative assumptions, which we were showing a contribution to reserves of $14 million. And the reason we were using conservative assumptions is because we don't know the market price benchmark, which is an important input in determining PCIA. We didn't know what those would be until the CPUC's Energy Division issues them in October of each year. And also there was uncertainty because PG&E was advocating that the market price benchmark MPV for RA be capped at last year's level. So we said we're going to take a conservative approach. We cap both RA and RPS prices, not because we were in agreement with PG&E, we wholeheartedly disagree with the position that they're taking, but just to be conservative in our budget projections. But at this time, we also estimated if we had to make projections as to what the MPVs could come out, not that we know how the CPUC would rule, but we said we could have an upswing of another $145 million if the high RA and our MPS prices were reflected in the MPV. And in the budget provided for a 4% overall customer discount with the 1% equivalent in dollar terms directed to as bill credits for low-income Carefare customers. The highlights of the budget is, well, it's good news. We're projecting to be $85 million higher, taking our net contribution from $14 million to close to $97 million. The revenues did not increase as much as $145 million because the bigger part of it is because the energy prices came down, which brought down the energy market price benchmarks down. So updating for power supply expenses, as I said, the contribution to reserves we're projecting to be about $97 million. We're truing up this budget for our programs transfers that we do every year. We transfer 2% of our revenues per board resolution to programs. Now that we have higher revenues, we're truing it up to that higher revenue number. And then also we're truing up the 1% bill credits for low-income customers. The reserves, I will share that with you. The good news is for the first time we are projecting to be higher than our reserve target of 350 days of cash on hand, but still below 500, and this is what is setting the stage for the next agenda item. So on the next slide here, I show the numbers. You can see the big difference here is the 85 million in energy revenues. Again, this is with the adoption of market price benchmarks. These are not guaranteed. We still don't know the final rates until later this month, very late this month. And the other two line items that we're adjusting is the transfer to the programs and the nearly $1 million additional in bill relief for low-income customers. And the only other minor adjustment is the non-operating revenue. That's just to reflect higher contribution to reserves, so we'll have higher investment income. So this is the chart where we're showing the reserve projections 5 years out. You can see, as I mentioned, first I should explain there are two bars there, the lighter blue and the darker blue. The lighter blue basically looks at the funds that we have available, taking into account funds that have been earmarked for programs and building fund that are not yet spent. The darker blue basically says, what if we were to take out the earmarked funds for the set aside for the building, the 20 million, and the unspent dollars that we have in program, close to about $100 million or so. So that's what we go by with our reserve targets. We're projecting the end of the fiscal year. If these numbers are to prevail, we will be at 382 days or 32 days of cash on hand, higher than our target of 350 days. So as I said, this enables us to consider funding our longer-term strategic priorities. Zoe is going to present these priorities in the next agenda item. And 32 days of additional days cash on hand translates to about $40 million with approximately a burn rate of about 1.25 million a day. Okay, so funding for strategic priorities. So this is a fund that Zoe will talk about that we want to set aside. So in good years, when we exceed our reserve targets, we would want to direct the fund, to this strategic fund, if the board were to approve this. And the way we want to do it is generally around the December timeframe or at the mid-year budget, because around December timeframe we have good understanding of what the prior fiscal year closed at, so we can look at on an actual basis what the prior year's reserve targets are, and we can also take into account the uncertainty in the budget that remains. So we may, for the then pending budget, we could transfer some money, or we can just purely base it on the prior fiscal year, or we can fund additional funds during the mid-year budget. For this current fiscal year, even though I said we are projecting 40 million, I'm recommending we don't fund anything yet. We may come back. There's some uncertainties in this budget, which I'll talk about in the next slide. If those uncertainties are removed, we feel good about our financial projections, we may ask for this funding in the mid-year budget in March. Okay, so what are the additional uncertainties? As I mentioned, PG&E was advocating for capping the RA MPV prices at last year's level. Doing so will raise our PCIA costs significantly higher than what we're projecting in this budget. Even they have brought this up a few times in this proceeding, in the PG&E's ERA proceeding, the rate setting proceeding for generation rates and PCIA. The judge actually said these arguments are out of scope, as they should have been, as we, and along with our working with CalCCA, have been advocating that these are out of scope arguments, because ERA is supposed to be administratively, you apply policies and decisions that the PUC has approved in a formulaic way. PG&E still proposes that. The proposed decision that came out in late November, the judge actually still said that PG&E's arguments are out of scope, but they may be considered in a new proceeding or possibly reopening the PCIA proceeding, which is very likely to happen. So the arguments will be heard, but not in this current rate setting. But there is also uncertainty, because a proposed decision is a proposed decision. There could be alternate decision. Proposed decisions could be modified. PG&E is still advocating that the RA MPVs be capped. So we don't know how the CPUC will rule later this month. They may be sympathetic to PG&E's arguments, they may deny it as the proposed decision does, or they may take some actions to moderate rate increases for bundle customers. So that uncertainty still remains. There's still final updates to be done for rate making. We take a snapshot projection of the latest information we have in November, but PG&E will update their error balances one more time. We're waiting for the CPUC decision, likely on the 15th of this month, and we won't know the final rates until late in December when they file their annual electric true-up. Okay, so those were the updates to the budget. With that update, what we're asking is as I said, the budget the adopted budget continues with the current 4% discount that we've been providing, with a 1% discount in dollars given as bill credits for low-income customers. So we're asking the board to grant the CEO the authority to implement new rates when PG&E's rates go into effect, and allowing for some time for us to basically vet those rates and put them into our billing system. And with the updated budget, we're asking the board adopt the updated budget as that's spelled out in the resolution, which basically deposits about $97 million to the reserves, directing additional close to $1 million for bill credits for fairer low-income customers, and an additional $1.7 million to the programs fund. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Amrit. So it's a good conservative budget where the problem is we are probably going to get a lot more millions in the reserves. Good problem to have, even though the final decision is not out there.
That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you for presenting that. Any questions? Director Lee.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thanks for the explanation of the really good news. We were trying to be conservative at 14, and now we end up to close to 97 million, which is nothing to sneeze at. Having said on so many different boards, this is definitely by far the most revenue positive boards I've sat on for a long time, including the county. And so congratulations. Those are certainly good news. My question here is, we really don't know the true rates yet until PG&E determines it later this month. So I am leaning to support where we are going at. At the same time, as I've said before, back in even September, it's the fact that we actually come up with a pretty significant revenue positive. And I think when I said this back in September, I was like, hey, even if we get 40, 50 million, maybe we could look into potentially giving more discounts for either customers, some of the ones, the lower income folks. So if we approve this today, let's say the numbers coming up end of this month terms to be positive for us, can we go back and review those issues in the next couple of months later on?
Yeah, a couple of things on that. We will revisit this budget again in March. So we'll have a full budget update in March. And there's a broader initiative. It's a key strategic focus area for us is affordability. And we want to look at affordability more broadly. So staff will be bringing that discussion to the board. As you know, 1% discount, even increasing 1% discount is about $5.4 million for us. But in terms of residential customers, it's like, 80 cents a month on bill credit. So it's quite a hit for us financially, but but there's a lot of elements to affordability. A big part of that is the portion covered by PG&E that keeps increasing significantly, the T&D portion. So this initiative will be brought, there's a bigger discussion on affordability that will be presented to the board.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other issue is there's about close to $1 million in this proposal for the lower income customers to help, you say, is it a credit? How much would that be approximately for each of those customers?
Yeah, so just to clarify, 1 million is an addition to what was already approved in the budget. So total allocation is about 5.4 or 5.37 to be precise.
Correct.
Which amounts to dollar bill credits that will be close to about $17
A month.
per month. And overall, when we combine this discount to our low-income customers, their overall bill, looking at the discount that they get for Carefara that's in the transmission and distribution rates, is about 44% or maybe even slightly higher than a low-income, non-Carefara customer. So that is a significant discount.
So approximately half off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our portion is about 20-some-odd%, and then the other percentage is in the T&D that's funded by state programs.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, let's open for public comment. No public comment. Bring it back to the board. Great presentation, Amrit. A lot of thoughtfulness. Deeply appreciated. I see a hand for a motion. Please go ahead, Brian.
I would make a motion to accept the budget as presented.
With the second part.
Adopt the resolution.
Adopt the resolution as set forth in the presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Director Showalter?
As somebody who sits on the Finance Committee, I would be glad to second it.
Thank you. Can we have a vote, please?
Yes, thank you. And this is for Resolution 2024-16. Chair Walia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Mohan?
Aye.
Hilton?
Aye.
Rennie?
Aye.
Montano?
Aye.
Mekachuk?
Aye.
Carruthers?
Aye.
Showalter?
Yes.
Lee?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Amrit. Thank you so
I'll
much.
stay on for this next.
Oh, okay. So the next item is a proposal, item number 4, proposal to establish the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Community Fund. It's a discussion item with a presentation, and we have a presentation by Zoe Elizabeth, Director of Decarbonization Policy and Community Strategies. Congratulations on your promotion. And we also have CF Amrit Singh here with us. Again, this one has gone through the Executive Committee as well as the Finance and Administrative Committees for initial feedback. Zoe, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Next slide.
The microphone.
Is it working? No.
Perhaps just
Okay.
bring it closer.
Okay. Good evening, Chair and Directors. I'm honored to bring this discussion item to you all this evening. It's the proposal to establish the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Community Fund. Amrit teed it up already, and I think it's a really fitting discussion for our capstone meeting of 2024. Next slide. Okay, so I will go through these 4 areas of discussion pretty quickly. There's a lot in there, but we really want most of this item to be hearing from you all. So there's more detail on the slides than I will go into. I will, at the very end, take questions and comments. You'll note that a few of the slides have the title discussion in them because we just wanted to highlight a couple areas where you may want to ask or probe more questions that are kind of the substance of the overall proposal. Thank you. Next slide. So as you all know, we operate in a very fluctuating, uncertain environment. We're seeking this fund so that we can have your strategic direction at this time so that we can operate to really grow our impact and think long-term despite the kind of uncertainty in which we operate on a day-to-day basis. So your strategic input now will help us to grow our long-term impact through community investments. Our mission, as you all know, is bold and big and not something that we can accomplish in 1-year planning or even 2-year planning. We've made great strides in the 7 years that we have been in business, but in many ways we've just reached base camp. The big mountain is in front of us, and this fund is meant to set aside the three next big strategic priorities so that we can start to make the big climb in the next phase of our work together. Next slide. And just as we're at this base camp, our organization is at this inflection point. As we mentioned, we're at the point where we're reaching reserve targets so we can begin to think long term about these bigger strategic initiatives that are central to that mission. At the same time, electricity bills are increasing. We need to really think about how we can maintain consistent discounts as well as affordability in a bigger way. New air district rules and other regulations are going to exponentially increase the demand for heat pumps in coming years, and we want to really ensure that this energy transition is accessible to all. And then, as you also have heard many times, evolving market conditions are making it more difficult to hit our clean targets, and we need to be thinking about emerging technologies and local solutions that can really ensure long-term, affordable, clean, reliable supply. So we mentioned this, but we can't make these decisions kind of on an annual basis. Cities often do this, and thinking about capital improvement plans is the metaphor that Monica has used. And in some ways, this is what we're talking about here, right? Setting aside money so that we can think about these long-term investments. We identified the 3 priority areas, but I also want to emphasize that you always still retain authority as the board to make shifts in directions if circumstances or priorities changed. And we went through these items. So this is just talking about how it's done, and then the examples you'll see, we're using $40 million to give a sense of what that would look like potentially for next year, or in March. So by investing in the 3 proposed priority areas, SVCE would be doing its best to ensure that the energy transition is affordable and accessible in the short term, medium term, and long term. And I should say these are things that staff, we've really been working on this for about 6 months across all departments and all teams to put together this proposal. Discount stabilization and bill affordability. So this is one we actually expanded after input from our executive committee and our finance committee. So this is there to help ensure that we can maintain a discount no matter what the financial position is per year, and also allows us flexibility to think about additional bill affordability solutions. Scalable support for pollution-free appliances. We want to move into a place where we're not just affordable for our NOx-free appliances aren't available just for early adopters, but are really mainstream. And so this area of the fund would allow us to do that. And then local and emerging power supply. We've got to think about those long-term solutions. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these in very brief detail. For the discount stabilization and bill affordability, this slide gives an example that Rick talked through as well about how much 1% discount costs and the benefit to different customer classes. Where our proposal is to set a target of $75 million for this particular initiative, which could be enough as one example to stabilize the discount for 3 years, or some combination of discount stabilization and affordability. Next slide. Scalable support for pollution-free appliances. We propose setting a target of up to $90 million for this initiative. And that's our estimate for what would be needed for the first 3 years of regulation under the Bay Area Quality Management's district rules for heat pump water heaters to ensure a combination of financing and rebates for all customers impacted. Next slide. Local and emerging power supply technology. We are proposing a target of up to $100 million, which could go towards the above market costs for local or emerging power supply technologies, local projects that includes demand flexibility, and other technologies. And this slide shows the overview of that proposal of each of the targets, and also goes through kind of some of the risks that you might want to consider. Okay, so that was the what. The next that I will go through is the how much money could be, or what are the different ways that funding could be allocated to those budgets in the years when there was money available to allocate. So we have developed 3 options for you all. These are not all the options that exist. These are example options. So I'll go through them briefly, and then I'll let you know the third, option C, is what staff's recommendation is. First is what we call a strict waterfall. So in that model, we would fund, for example, first the discount stabilization and bill affordability, and any additional funds each year would go into that bucket until it was funded at its 100% threshold or 100% target of $75 million. And then funding would go to the next priority of scalable support for pollution-free appliances, and then to emerging technology. So the next buckets are only funded once the preceding buckets are met their target. Option B, the same concept, but starting with scalable support for pollution-free appliances. Of course, we could also have an option with power supply, right? You get the idea there of how that could go. Next target. And then staff's recommendation is a percent allocation that would allow us to begin funding each of the priorities at some level from the beginning. And our proposal is 40% for discount stabilization, 40% for scalable support for pollution-free appliances, and 20% for power supply and emerging technology. And this slide shows a summary of the three options and what the impact would be if there was this $40 million in the first year of the fund. And the C, the bolded, is staff's recommendation. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So now this is a little bit more of the how to summarize. So we talked about we're asking for the strategic direction now so that we can begin planning long term. We've identified these three bucket areas and different ways the funds could be allocated. And then again, what would happen if the board would request staff to go forward, staff would draft a resolution for you all to adopt and approve that would determine the threshold funding levels available, the targets, and the allocations, so the items that we went through previously. And then as a part of the budgeting process, when funds are available, the board would approve the annual transfers to each initiative based on those allocations. And then staff would bring the detailed funding proposals forward at the appropriate times, very similar to how we do with other programs. So there that be that additional level of review, for example, on what type of affordability measures staff was thinking about, or the exact program design, or the emerging power supply technologies. Emphasizing that just because there's a lot of ongoing discussion and transparency in the process. And then, of course, the funds priorities would be capped based on the recommended maximums, and the total would be set at $265 million. And of course, you retain the authority to make changes at any time. And that closes my fast presentation, and I look forward to your questions.
Zoe, very crisp presentation is how I would put it, very clear. Do we have questions for Zoe? Director Rennie.
So I'm making a lot of assumption in my understanding of what you're calling scalable support for pollution-free appliances. Let me talk you through what I think I see. So BACMed has rules coming that won't allow water heaters or HVAC systems that have NOx emissions to be sold in the area in 2027. We're talking about, I'm assuming, so they're basically forcing the change. A lot of the time we expend money to encourage people to change. We do spend some money and resiliency and so forth, which isn't necessarily encouraging, but supporting the whole climate issue. This looks like completely money for supporting versus actually encouraging, because they're already going to be forced to change. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. It's really a flip of the model in many ways. And actually, BACMed board had a meeting today and talked exactly about this. And so maybe just a minute of part of the reason for that is that the cost to make this shift to heat pump water heaters when BACMed's rule go into effect will still be higher than it is to replace gas with gas. So one, it seems pretty clear that in order for the rules like this to go forward, there needs to be additional financial support for folks. So we see this level of funding as kind of a way of making rules like this feasible and not too painful for folks.
And so will you be, part of what's going to cost more is you got to probably now run a 240 circuit. Maybe panels have to be upgraded. Hopefully we can get around that. Maybe the water heater costs a little bit more. I'm not sure on that side. But so are we going to be focused on helping with the electrical work on this more than versus subsidizing the cost of a new water heater or HVAC?
Yeah, and our programs in a lot of ways do that today because the rebates can go up to cover really the whole project cost. And the majority of the incremental cost for installing a heat pump water heater really is labor. It's running circuits, adding ventilation, maybe doing some other small modifications. In terms of what exactly the design of the program would be, that is something that we would come back to the board with. But you could imagine a combination of rebates, incentives, also probably some financing.
So if I could just make a comment now so I don't have to come back later. It seems like a big number just for support that isn't actually helping to drive decarbonization. And what I don't see in the list and what is missing is getting people to change their stoves. It's not included in the BACMed rules. It looks like it's going to be missing in our replacement REACH code rules. So it has less of a driver probably on climate change because you don't use as much gas, but it's a big deal for indoor air pollution and the health of people. So it seems like maybe we should have some money in here to help encourage the change of to induction stoves, since that's not, it's being missed in our REACH code changes, it's not in the BACMed rules and so forth. So my thought, maybe we should think about that a little bit more.
Thank you.
Great questions and great comment, Rob. Other questions? Seeing none, let's open for public comment. None? Bring it back to the board. Comments, Director Lee?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank staff for this very comprehensive proposal, which is very forward-thinking. I'm definitely supportive of the recommendation of option 3 for the potential funding allocation so that we could actually begin to fund all the different initiatives at once and not wait for this one, then the other, then the other. The first stage of implementation for zero NOx appliance rules will begin in 2027. So we must start preparing this fund as soon as possible. These rules are extremely important and applicable to our mission, and so supporting community and transitioning the appliances is vital. At today's BACMed Air District meeting, an update on the Rule 9.6 was discussed, and our region faces difficulties, particularly with challenging installation cases that require complex electrical work or panel or utility service upsizing. There's also a need for continued and longer-term funding to ensure the affordability. Support from agencies like ours is essential for the successful implementation of these rules. SVC is already providing programs to help with this implementation, but continued increased support could make a significant difference in our whole region. And additionally, as more and more people struggle with the rising utility bills, ensuring rate discounts of PG&E rates in future years and funding other measures to increase affordability is very much needed. So I just want to say thank you, staff, for proposing this very forward-thinking fund that will protect our ability to forward our mission in these essential ways in the future, and I move for the approval of these recommendations. Thanks.
Okay, so just a very quick comment. In other words, Silicon Valley Clean Energy is a good partner to everyone, other agencies as well as the community. It's late at night. It's been a very busy evening. I just wanted to highlight that because we all deserve a pat on the back for something like that. Do I have a second for the motion? Director Rennie seconds it. Director Lee had made the motion.
Pardon, we did not have this as an action item. It's agendized as a discussion item only.
Only discussion with
Yes,
no?
we'll
Okay.
come back in probably February, March with an actual recommendation.
Thank you for correcting us. I saw the puzzled looks because CFO
Sorry,
Amrit
my
Singh
bad.
are
was.
faster than we are.
No, that's good. But the comments still stay there. And CFO Amrit Singh was very clear about this in the prior item, that this money allocation can only happen after March, after we are very clear about the budget. So I guess we are very excited at the work that is being done by the team, and for that, deeply appreciated. Thank you so much. So are we good? Any other quick comments? Director Showalter.
I just wanted to reinforce what both Director Rennie and Director Lee said. I particularly think that going forward, when people want to make changes and electrify their house, at least many people I know, they want to do the whole thing. You know, they see it as a stepwise thing. So I think that we want to make sure that we are providing incentives for the cooktops as well. And maybe we're not going to do that, you know, at the first step, but as time goes on, it needs to be a whole package.
Yeah, and I'm sure you discussed more during your finance committee meeting, but in the exec committee meeting, we were talking of all possibilities where it can, the affordability is an issue moving forward at different income levels as well. And with all the state rules coming and the BACMED rules coming, staff is very sensitive and aware of all the needs, and you all do a fabulous job. Any other comments? If not, okay, let's keep rolling. Thank you so much, Zoe. Thank you, Amrit. Next item is playing musical chairs. Item number 5, approve the 2025 Legislative Policy Platform and formation of 2025 Legislative Ad Hoc Committee, presented by Benna Chang, Director of Government and Legislative Affairs.
Good evening, Chair and Board. It's always a hard act to follow Zoe, but I will try to make this pretty brief. So I'm here tonight to talk about the past legislative year and get your approval on legislative activities for next year. So just to talk about this last year, the top issue for the legislature and the governor was clearly energy affordability. There were several proposals at the legislature to address affordability, but the legislature ultimately made what I would call modest strides to address this issue. At the end of session, there was also a movement to require more programs reporting by the CPUC. And then finally, on the good news front, voters approved Proposition 4, the climate bond, which this board supported, and includes multi-year investments for energy and climate projects. At the federal level, we spent this year really focused on educating agency staff and legislators about the CCA model. Next year, we expect affordability to be a major issue at both the state and federal levels. At the state, we also anticipate working on legislation around Western energy markets, also known as regionalization. At the federal level, we anticipate defending funding and working on permit modernization. Transitioning now to the next year, we'd like to talk about the 2025 Legislative Policy Platform. This year's Legislative Ad Hoc Committee reviewed suggested changes to the policy platform and are not proposing any new high-level principles, which are listed on the screen here. However, we are proposing to refine the details on the principles, including adding affordability policies and policies that would make our programs and operations easier. Finally, we're proposing to add advocating for CCA program autonomy to the policy platform and removing items that are already accomplished, such as supporting a statewide climate bond. We wanted to spend a moment tonight talking about how staff works with the board on legislative issues. So our general approach is really minimum time and maximum impact for our board members. There's 2 main ways that we work with you. First, it's really critical that we keep you apprised of major legislation that impacts our business, either positively or negatively. So we communicate in a variety of ways. For example, the board receives monthly written updates in Monica's CEO report. We also provide verbal updates to the board, especially on top priority legislative activities. And then finally, we lean on our legislative ad hoc committee of the board to really have in-depth conversations on legislation. I just wanted to emphasize how important the role of the board is on legislation. A lot of you have very strong relationships with state and federal policymakers. That is very helpful for us to advocate on critical mission critical legislation. So as I mentioned, the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee is the forum we use to talk in more detail with the board about legislation. This is an ad hoc committee of the board that meets 3 times a year at strategic times in the legislative process. Wanted to thank the chair of the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee, Director Martinez Beltran, who's not here tonight, as well as all the members of the board of the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee for your service this year. If the board approves the creation of an ad hoc committee tonight, we really encourage board members who are interested in legislation to volunteer when Andrea makes that call. So again, finally, our recommendation tonight is to approve the 2025 Legislative Policy Platform and to create the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee for next year.
Thank you, Beta. Do I have clarifying questions? None? Let's open for public comment. Close public comment, bring it back to the board for comments, discussion.
Sorry.
Did you want to? Director Makachek?
I just have a comment. I want to thank you for when I call you before I meet with other elected officials at the state and federal level. Your counsel is always welcome and very much appreciated. So you didn't mention that you do that. that's part of the board interaction with you that I've had.
Thank
so
you.
I wanted to commend you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are lucky at SVCE to have Bena for this specific area.
Thank you, Chair.
Other comments? Seeing none. This one we do need a motion. There are a couple of items staff is recommending. Director Klein?
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Can we have the vote, please, Andre?
Yes, Chair Walia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Mohan?
Aye.
Hilton?
Aye.
Rennie?
Aye.
Montano?
Aye.
Mekachek?
Aye.
Carruthers?
Aye.
Showalter?
Yes.
Lee?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Once again, Bena, your work is deeply appreciated. You're the quiet, understated person dealing with a lot of stuff. Moving on to item number 6, approve SVCE's policy updates as part of the agency policies streamlining project. And the staff person speaking is Michael Callahan, General Counsel. Michael, thank you for bringing this. This has also gone to both the Executive Committee as well as the Finance and Administrative Committee, correct?
That is correct, Chair Walia.
Okay, wonderful. I know when this started in the Finance Committee in fall of 2023, so this is exciting to see this come to fruition, completion tonight. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'm excited to bring it. And I'm joined here by Demery Weber, who has helped me tremendously. It's been very much a partnership getting through this, and just wanted to mention that. So, as Chair Walia mentioned, we're bringing the policy streamlining project to the board. If we go to the next slide, we've looked at all of the agency's policies, and if you've been on the Finance and Administration Committee or the Executive Committee, you've seen some of this. But what we're proposing is to move a lot of the detail that's operational or sensitive or may change because of changes in law into CEO-approved standards and effectively retiring the policies where that detail lives today. And so there's actually a 2-slide recommendation here. The column on the far left are new policies for adoption. These largely are just updates to our existing policies. And then the 2 columns on the right for this slide are policies we're proposing to retire and again move largely into CEO-approved standards. Next slide, please. And so you can see the recommendation continues with some additional policies for adoption, revised or consolidated policies, as well as the remaining policies we're proposing for retirement. Next slide. This is a snapshot of the process we've taken to get to this point. As the chair mentioned, this started in November of last year at the Finance and Administration Committee, suggesting staff review the policies. We've done that over the last year to look for opportunities to eliminate redundancies and, again, move those operational or sensitive details into the CEO-approved standards while keeping all of the key policy details at the board level. That's gone to the Executive Committee and the Finance Administration Committee. They've each sort of looked at their own portion of the policies. Both committees voted unanimously to recommend that the board adopt the policies as proposed, and we're here tonight to do that. After this meeting, if the board adopts the policies, staff will move quickly to adopt the standards that we've developed. And then in the near term, we're going to roll out all of the new and adopted changed rules to staff. And in the long term, we've identified regular review for each policy, as well as a regular cadence for training specified staff on each policy. Next slide. This policies standards, which I've mentioned, and then below the standards would be procedures. This new structure is our step forward in trying to mature the policies and the way that all the information is organized. And as I mentioned, the policies would remain at the board level, high level. They would enable the organization to do things with specified limitations. The CEO's standards would sort of take those policies and implement them. How are we going to do these things? And then the procedures would live under those, not for everything we do, but for some of the things that need to be consistent. We'll develop sort of step-by-step procedures that staff can follow to make sure that we're carrying out the policies and the standards appropriately. Next slide. And, as part of this process, we looked at the controls that were embedded within the policies, and we're looking at this as well on the standards and procedure level. And controls effectively are designed to, prevent malicious activity, double checking, having multiple people sign off on expense reports, things like that. And so there's some examples of controls here. There's a table of all of the controls related to the policies in the staff report if you're curious about that. And again, we'll be developing additional controls in the standards and procedures. Next slide. This is just a snapshot at sort of what's happening here. We're proposing 21 policies at the end of the day while retiring 30 policies. We're updating the HR handbook, and we've developed 30 new standards largely by pulling details out of existing policies. Next slide. Now I'm going to go through sort of each policy area and provide a few highlights, starting here with finance. And so some of the key takeaways in the finance policies, we're proposing to increase the CEO's delegated signing authority. So it is currently $100,000 per fiscal year. We're proposing to increase that to $250,000 per fiscal year. And that would streamline the amount of information that staff's prepping for the board, streamline the amount of information the board is reviewing when it comes to those sort of lower priority and smaller contracts. So trying to bring more of that and streamline the work to get it all approved. We're also proposing to remove the ability to invest in fossil fuel investments from the investment policy, not currently invested in any, but want to ensure we can't move in that direction. And we're proposing to increase capitalization limits on our assets from a $1,000 limit up to a $5,000 limit. There's a number of other revisions, if you've looked at the red lines, including clarifying that the Finance Administration Committee doesn't need to be precisely 5 members, that the capital projects and debt limit rules are going to move to the staff or CEO level standards. We've added delegations of purchasing authority. We've defined some solicitation requirements. We've moved from the investment policy a number of very detailed sections into a CEO-approved standard. We've clarified that SVCE does not have the power to disconnect customers and moved the generation rates and charts of accounts policies to a standard. Next slide. So this just gives you kind of a visual of what I just said. And so on the top line, those are the policies that are going to remain. The blue boxes below that are those are the green ones are the policies. The blue boxes below are the standards we're developing. Then the 4 gray ones we're proposing to retire, and those are moving into standards. Next slide. And this is the IT policy area. This is a bit of a simpler explanation. Effectively, we've consolidated our IT policy into from 15 policies into one single policy. It's now, it's a new policy. It's been replaced by a model policy. And then we're moving the content, the detail from those 15 policies into CEO approved standards. And we're doing this in the IT space because there's a need to update things regularly. There's also a number of sensitive items and details in there, like how we set passwords and things that we don't want to publish, and help folks sharpen their phishing attacks. So that's the big update with IT. Next slide. And you can see that here. So you see there's the one policy, the standards under that, and then the retired policies below. Next slide. And then for the general administrative policies, a lot of cleanup here. We've given the CEO the ability to designate new rules for staff travel and reimbursement that would be different from the rules that apply to the board. The board rules are in the policy, so the CEO could define different rules in a standard. We've refreshed the record retention policy to kind of streamline the information, make it simpler and easier to follow. And we've done a number of other updates as well. Established reimbursement rules for the board, as I mentioned, at the policy level, updated the files and records management documents, including the retention timelines there to make it, again, easier to follow. New rules for files and records management. We've consolidated a vehicle policy and an electric charger use policy into a vehicle and charger use policy. There's some admin cleanup, and then we included the Public Records Act exceptions in that policy. Next slide. And again, you can see the snapshot. We're retaining most of the general administrative policies, developing a few standards, and consolidating a couple and retiring another policy. Next slide. And this is the HR department. We're approaching it a little bit similarly to IT. So we're consolidating what was previously 8 HR policies into one HR policy that is really a consolidation of the existing personnel authority that was either delegated in a resolution that covers personnel authority, or the overhire authority that was previously in the budget policy, or the travel and reimbursements policy, which was a separate standalone policy. We've consolidated those into a personnel and reimbursement policy. So that is the one HR policy. The rest of the policies that were there previously are moving into standards. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll be able to see that. The one HR policy with the handbook, which we're viewing as a standard level document, all of the sort of associated standards that were previously in policies there, and then the retired policies. Next slide. So in terms of the process, we've gone to the committees. We're here to propose to the board to adopt the policies that staff's recommending. If the board adopts them, staff will move expeditiously to adopt the standards that we've put together based on the previous policies. And then in the first quarter of next year, we're focusing on rolling out the policy changes and training existing and new board members to the extent we have them. And then turning to the continuous improvement with regular reviews and training going forward. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of the presentation and available for questions.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you, Demery, for your work. I know this has taken a lot of effort, a lot of details here. It looks very crisp, very clean. And this has happened as the organization has grown, and with time, some things change, the processes change, and how you have put it together is just phenomenal. Thank you very much on behalf of everyone from the board. I know it took a lot of work. I know that. Okay, questions? Clarifying questions? I have a comment. Anyone? Let me take public comment. Okay, no questions. What a phenomenal job. Okay, public comment?
No
None?
hands raised, Chair.
Okay, wonderful. Bring it back to the board, and I have Vice Chair Tyson who has a comment.
Yes, my comment is working as I do in a highly regulated industry. I appreciate that it's bad to not have a policy, but it's far worse to have a policy and not follow it. And so the efforts that you've made to create this hierarchy and the strategies to make it easier to say, I've covered it and we're going to follow it, and then also weed out the things that don't need to be at that level. And I looked through it and I saw so many red lines. I thought, my goodness, I'm glad somebody did this, not me. So I just echo what Chair said about the effort involved, but also the strategy I also want to say how much I endorse that.
Director Lee?
This is like the year-end house cleaning we need to do. And look at the number of IT policies. My eyes just bulged up. Are you kidding me? How many they came through. And of course, every one of them has a reason why they were there. So I'm so glad that finally we got all cleaned up and come up one main ones with the standards. So I just want to say thank you, staff. This is no small feat, but it's so important for us to move on to organization. So I just say thank you very much for the good work. Also highlighting the issue, we do not invest, or we have never invested on fossil fuels, and we definitely will not invest in fossil fuels, period. So thank you.
Okay, Director Makachek?
In your present, first of all, thank you very much. That was well done. I think it's part of the natural evolution of SVCE from when we were founded to where we are now, so it's good to be at this point. And your, maybe one of the slides for your timeline, if you also had one that with the number of employees, you would see it's gone up dramatically, and I think Director Rennie was one of the original directors. So you've seen the growth and the evolution from where we were back then to where we are now. So well done. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I can see Director Meadows smiling. You may recall that Finance and Admin Committee meeting in fall of 2023 when you were there, I was there, and Supervisor-elect Margaret Abekoga was there when some of these things happened, precisely for the reason that has been mentioned before, the organization had grown. And so great point to move things, not to make it so cumbersome to have a long list of policies. This makes the organization nimble and work in a better manner. CEO Padilla has a comment.
Yeah, I want to add one comment. I certainly want to thank staff. I echo everything that everybody said on the board. It's been a big project, and Demi and Mike took it on and did a great job. But I also want to mention that a lot of what we've done, as you notice, is to take things that used to be at the board level and given me that authority. And I don't take that lightly at all. I know it comes with a huge amount of responsibility. So, you know, I'm committed, and the organization is committed to these standards and the oversight of these standards that will exist at the different committees, whether it's executive or finance, because I know this is a huge thing that's been entrusted to us. And so I just want to make sure that that's not lost on me or my staff, and that you all are aware that just because we've moved it over to the CEO level doesn't mean that it's not important. So I just want to make that comment.
Appreciate that, and certainly didn't take it that way. I'm sure nobody did.
No.
And I think that's why I specifically would mention the word used by Michael, training of staff, training of current board members and new board members. That's the best way to move forward with the process. Thank you. On this one, we do need a motion, and who wants to make the motion? Director Makachek.
I'll make the motion as set forth in the presentation.
And Director Mohan? I'll second it. Okay, great job, staff. Andrea, can we have the vote, please?
Yes. Chair Walia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Scozola?
Aye.
Mohan?
Aye.
Hilton?
Aye.
Rennie?
Aye.
Montano?
Aye.
Makachek?
Aye.
Carruthers?
Yes.
Showalter?
Yes.
Lee?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you. And moving on to the last item for tonight's meeting, 2025 SVCE elections. It's an informational item. You know, this feels good. There's so much work the team has been doing this year, 2024. Everything is kind of getting wrapped up, and now we are looking forward to 2025. Change happens. Go ahead, Andre.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Chair, Board of Directors. So yes, as Chair Walia mentioned, we're looking to 2025. So the next time we meet will be January 8th, where we will be making appointments for our chair, board vice chair, and executive committee members. So we wanted to go over the process and timeline for that in addition to our other committees. So again, at our January board meeting, we'll be looking at our board chair, board vice chair, and executive committee membership. So we're requesting that anybody interested in serving as our board chair or board vice chair, please submit a letter of interest to me. That letter would be due by December 31st so that I can include this information in our packet so that you all can make those appointments come January. If you're interested in our executive committee, please also let me know if you're interested in joining that group by December 31st. No letter required for that. If you would just let me know, I can include that information. But again, yes, board chair, board vice chair, we would like to include a letter in our packet. For our remaining committees, those will be made in February. So that's our Finance and Administration Committee, our Audit Committee, and this evening you approved the 2025 Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. So in February, we'll be making those appointments. If you're interested in joining one of those groups, we ask that you reach out to me by January 31st. And I'll be sending information via email as well. This won't be the last time you hear about this. So if you're a little tired and you can't remember, don't worry, because I'll be sending something out. But the information for our committees will be sent to primary directors in addition to alternates, because alternate directors, in addition to member agency staff, can serve on these committees. The board vice chair, chair, and executive committee roles will be held by primary board members. So this is a timeline snapshot of what I just shared with you. If there's anything to take away, it's really the deadlines for these. Again, chair, vice chair, executive committee, please let me know by December 31st. Other committees, January 31st, and we'll make those appointments in January and February. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the process or any of our committees.
Thank you, Andrea. Questions? None? Public comment? None? No. Bring it back to board. Any comment? None? Wonderful. That wraps it up. And now we move on to board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Before we do that, I do want to say it has been a long meeting. There have been a lot of moving parts, and everybody has been very patient. I especially want to thank staff. Not only this evening, this actually just drives home the point. It has been a great, successful year at SVCE this year. We have successfully transitioned to a new CEO. Great job, Monica Padilla, for that. As I mentioned at the mixer earlier this evening, the mixer was the power of community. What a great way to wrap up the year. Phenomenal year. SVCE's dream team, thank you. Thank you for the dream home out there with the hot cocoa and everything else. Just great job. Can't thank you enough. You make it all happen for the community. And for that, on behalf of the board, I really, really want to thank each one of you. Okay, back to board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Anyone, my colleagues? Director Lee?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I had the opportunity to attend the COP29 conference this year's Azerbaijan, which is half the world away, literally. Their time zone was AM, PM, so right now it's actually 9 AM over there, so it's really half a world away. I would say it's actually been kind of a sad conference, given the fact that with the election results, it's very likely that the next federal administration will withdraw from the Paris Agreement, for example. And under that type of shadow, I think a lot of folks are quite sad where the future of our climate action is going to be in terms of the not just the federal administration, but how those affect the rest of the world, and of course of the many of the countries that is not well funded, but they are the ones who are suffering most. You know, we say we thinking globally, act locally. Locally, we're doing amazing work right here, both the state and some Air District and this board. But I would just have to say that we certainly need to get ready for what's coming after January 20th in terms of a lot of the policies that we've been doing so much and getting funding for through the IRA, for example. I think a lot of funding will likely be dried up very quickly. So I think I'm really glad to see that we're the financially we're so healthy for now, because a lot of the funding that would be used to fund these really important initiatives in the future might no longer be there. So I think we just need to be very much aware and get ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Nothing? So with that, I will still say thank you so much for a phenomenal year. We have done a lot of work. We have all achieved a lot. And I wish each one of you happy holidays and Merry Christmas. And the meeting is adjourned at 8:51 p.m. Thank you.
All right. Very good year.
I wish I was in school. If only I had a math test today. Or a book report to give. I wish I was in school.